I'm excited to turn it over to Josh Newton, Senior Vice President for Advancement in Alumni Engagement, who hopefully you all know because Josh has been on the road all year talking to alums at these 2036 events, and he's a huge champion for our Emory volunteers. So Josh, we're thrilled to have you here today and providing us with an insider update on the 2036 campaign. All right, so can we spotlight Josh?
Thanks, Sarah. And thanks to you and your team for your leadership and all that you do. But I especially want to add my thanks to the volunteers for all that they do. You'll probably hear me reference several times in my remarks how you are the foundation of what we're trying to accomplish within our office and our team here at Emory. And actually, I'm going to start in that direction. I was asked to speak about 2036, which I look forward to doing. But part of speaking about 2036, I feel like that's starting at the end rather than the beginning of the work of our division, Advancement and Alumni Engagement. I came back into this role. It's hard to believe it'll be 4 years this fall. And yet we've had obviously transition at the university in terms of leadership, the pandemic, and so many things. And yet the progress we've been able to make in terms of alumni engagement has been tremendous. My team hears me say all the time that creating an engaged culture within our alumni community is the foundation of what we must accomplish if we are going to create the alumni community that Emory deserves. So I'm going to start with some foundational numbers. Feel free to take notes. I know Sarah's recording this, and I do this all the time off the cuff, so I have a lot of numbers in my head. But when I returned to Emory 4 years ago, and we look at measuring alumni engagement, we look at join, attend, lead, and give. And across all spectrums of alumni engagement, at the time with 154,000 alumni, there were 28,800 alums engaged the year prior to my arrival. I came in September 1st, the beginning of our fiscal year. If you look at the percentages, right, that's 19% of our alumni population engaged with us in some way. I set a marker that I wanted to move to a third engagement across the spectrum. A third of our college alums, our business alums, our nursing, our Candler, a third of our alums in New York, in San Francisco, in Chicago, in Phoenix, everywhere. If we can put as a goal for ourselves a third engagement, it would be transformational. Transformational in many ways, supporting each other, alumni to alumni, supporting our students, and building an alumni community that is more robust in engagement and activity. Part of that was investing in this team and investing in putting staff around the country and doing the same thing on the advancement side. I talk about alumni engagement because the only way that we can create a more robust culture, right, of supporting our young alumni graduates who move to cities, supporting our students, supporting alumni interviewing, supporting mentoring, and job placement, all the things that we need to do, take an engaged community. And I like to start there rather than with 2036, because 2036 in our campaign is the culmination. It's the give and join, attend, lead, and give. And if we don't first create a culture of engagement, we will never change the culture of giving back with a disconnected alumni population. So part of what we're trying to do in the Emory Alumni Association is bolster the engagement of our alumni community across the spectrum. And I'm happy to report that while the pandemic has been challenging, the ability to do virtual programming, and then this past year, as we were able to get back out on the road, our alumni engagement over the last 3 years has grown from that 28,800 number to over 46,000 engaged alums last year. Our alumni population has also increased, right, as we graduate new classes. So we have around 162,000, I believe, Sarah, 62,000 alumni around the world. And moving from 28,800 to almost 29,000 to 46,000 engaged alumni elevates us from an 18-19% engagement to a 28-29% engagement rate. So you see the tremendous work that this team has done, and I want to compliment my colleagues for the work that they're doing regionally across the country and across the world, and the work that you're doing as our volunteer leaders. Because without your, again, I said it at the beginning, without your engagement as volunteer leaders, this has to be volunteer driven. We as a team are prepared to support all of this work, but we, thank you, Sarah, we can't do it without you. We literally can't do it without you. And having engaged alumni across the country as part of our networks, affinity groups, all of the activity that you're supporting, my social media feed is full of the activities happening in New York and DC and Chicago and Tampa and Florida. And I am so encouraged to see this increased community of engagement, because it is engagement that for me and my role is fundamental to the work that we're doing in advancement and alumni engagement. And the work of the Alumni Association and the work that you're doing is the work that will contribute to our success and building a world-class alumni community. I tell stories about how I get to communities around the country and we have parents show up, right? Parents will show up to an event with the president and they'll seek me out. And I'm like, huh, why did they seek me out? And they'll come over and say, you know, I came tonight to see how engaged the alumni community of Emory is. If I'm going to send my daughter from Chicago to Emory, my son from San Diego to Emory, right? My daughter from Connecticut to Emory, I want to know that there's a robust community of alumni that will continue to support my son, daughter, when they graduate from Emory in the communities that they may choose to live, be it this one or some other around the country. And our need to strengthen that community is the foundational work that we're doing and that you're doing as our volunteers and leaders. So 2036 is the fourth pillar, right? Join, attend, lead, and give. It's the give portion and giving back to Emory to support our mission. Again, you know, I'm very honest with the stats. You heard me talk about 18% engagement has gone to 28%. Our giving is unfortunately among the lowest of our peers. Two of my colleagues recently attended a conference of our peers in DC. And alumni giving nationally has been on the decline, right? Alumni are giving, you know, to GoFundMe and other charities and friends, you know, engagements. Alumni giving amongst our peers is at an average, and this, I'd be interested how people react, an average of 18%, right? It's not 30%, 40%. I wish it were, but the average amongst our peer set is 18% alumni engagement, going as high as into the low to mid 20s. Yes, you can look at some of the small liberal arts. Leading the way, of course, is Princeton at 58% alumni giving. Davidson, Hamilton, Dartmouth, some of those universities are in the 40, 50% range. But of our peer set and universities that you hear a lot about, the average amongst our peer set is 18% alumni giving at the undergraduate level. We are at 9%. Single digit. Well, I say it's not surprising that we're at 9% alumni giving when our engagement rate was only 18%, right? Our overall engagement giving rate is actually 13% when you put undergraduate and graduate alumni together. 13% alumni giving. My goal is, as we elevate engagement from 18 to 28 to 33 to 35% engagement, that a lagging indicator will be, do the alumni who step forward to get engaged, that join activities, that participate, that lead in some meaningful way in the service as you all are doing, do they then transition from engaged alum to donor? And the 2036 campaign, and that's why I wanted to start at the beginning rather than the end with the campaign itself, is about how do we bolster giving from our alumni community. Last year, Emory raised $447 million, a lot of money, right? But the vast majority of that was given to the healthcare side for disease cure and research, which is phenomenal. And that is part of the very important work that we do at Emory. But giving from our alumni was less than 70 million of that 447. So our alumni community is giving somewhere to the tune of 12 to 13% of the total amount that we're raising on an annual basis. So one of the things that I like to talk about is the need to elevate those of you who are passionate about the schools and units you graduated from or some area at Emory in the way that others, grateful patients, friends, community members have been passionate about other areas of Emory. You know, the punchline of the campaign 2036, by the way, is our bicentennial, founded in 1836. And if you go back to 1979, it was a 15-year period, 1979 to 1994. Over that 15-year period, Emory transformed from a regional to an international university, and in 1994 was invited to join the AAU, the 68 top universities in the world. We wanted to imagine between 2021, when we launched the campaign last fall, and 15 years from now, 2036, what could the investment in this campaign do to transform Emory over the next 15 years? So this campaign, by the way, is only 8 years. It was 4 years already in progress when we launched it in the fall. Many universities or nonprofits call that the silent phase. It's not very silent. I call it the leadership gift phase, where you are raising gifts, but doing it more quietly as you work out the priorities and the goals across your schools and units. It's an 8-year campaign total, launched at the 4th year. We launched at 2.6 billion with a $4 billion goal. And there's the big number, right? But when you go individually by school and unit, as I mentioned earlier, medicine has a goal of 1.5 billion. Winship Cancer Institute, separate from medicine, has a goal of 600 million. So those two entities by themselves represent over half of the total campaign at 2.1 billion just for medicine and Winship Cancer Institute. When you start going by the individual schools, Oxford, nursing have $80 million goals, right? That's 10 million a year over an 8-year period for a total of 80 million. I can guarantee you the deans of those schools would tell you that that's inadequate for the type of support we need to be raising to maintain our competitiveness. I love to call out the School of Nursing. The School of Nursing is a top 5 ranked program nationally. It's one of our highest ranked schools at Emory. And yet the nursing school only has four endowed chairs. If you look at any of our peer nursing schools, they would have 12 or 15 endowed chairs. Endowed chairs are those things that recruit the top faculty, retain faculty, provide research, and elevate. And we're a top 5 nursing program with only 4 endowed chairs. So when I talk about the passion that I want our alums to have, is I want people to invest in the schools that they care about. Because when you look across of our 9 schools and units, the college has the largest goal at 350 million, right? Business at 150. I think law, nursing, and Oxford are at 80 million, just to give you a sense. So that 4 billion number in my mind is very deceiving. Yes, it's the overall number that we are trying to reach at Emory over an 8-year period. And yet at the individual school level, the numbers are not that significant and need to be more significant if Emory, and I think one of the things we all get excited about is wanting to be more competitive, wanting to be higher ranked, wanting to be elevated into the top ranks of universities nationally and internationally. And when you look at endowed chairs and the competitiveness, and I'll come back, I see some of the questions popping up. The president asked me to do a comparison of endowed chairs at our peer universities. Let me tell you the 6 peer universities he asked me to look at: Vanderbilt, Duke, Hopkins, WashU, Northwestern, and Penn. And if you look at those 6 universities, the average number of endowed chairs, and endowed chairs are those things, an endowed chair it's a $1.5 million, right? At a 5% payout, that's giving barely $150,000 to a distinguished faculty member to support their research, graduate students, etc. Those are the things that recruit top faculty to universities across the country. The average number at our peers was 402. Emory has 256 endowed chairs. So in this campaign, for example, we want to catch up. And of course, none of them are standing still while we try to catch up. But we want to increase the number of endowed chairs so that we can be more competitive in faculty recruitment. The same is true for endowed scholarships. Emory College, our largest college, gives out $120 million in financial aid a year. Only 8% of that comes from income off of endowed scholarships, which means the other 92% comes from the college's operating budget, i.e. tuition, which makes us heavily tuition dependent. So I try to break down the big number to get to the individual impact that this campaign can have for Emory if we are able to secure the resources, not overall, but school by school. Because if we raise $4 billion, but don't raise the money that the college needs to elevate itself, that the business school needs, that the law school needs, that public health needs, then we will not catch up. And in fact, I fear, and I think the president fears, we will fall behind if we aren't able to continue to remain competitive in that landscape. So Sarah, I'm watching time, and I know that I think I'm right at or over my 15 minutes, but I know there's some questions, and I'll depend on you to maybe throw some of these this way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Josh. No, I think all this information is fascinating, and we could go on for a while. So I think there was one question about how this translates to budget. So you did answer that other things suffer, right? If the schools have to adjust more budget to scholarship, then they can't do something that might enrich a student experience, correct?
Correct. I mean, if we're using operating funds, i.e. tuition, and again, that's the model of higher education in the United States, that tuition funds operating budgets, i.e. the less endowment we have by school, the more operating funds that it takes just to run the enterprise, and the less creative and innovative we can be in terms of programming, student support, and other types of services.
Absolutely. Okay. And then second question, why are endowed chairs relevant in today's world?
Yeah, I mean, it is the hallmark of distinguished faculty. If you are a top faculty member in your field, the expectation is that you will be provided an endowed chair to support your research and study. So if we are not offering endowed chairs to our top faculty, it's interesting, the president in a call the other day called faculty a free agency market in today's world. And those universities with the most resources are coming in and recruiting our faculty to their universities with endowed chairs. And if we can't bring in those faculty, I mean, I hear alums all the time talk about their favorite professor. Those favorite professor are some of our most notable faculty. We need to continue to recruit in and retain those top faculty at Emory.
Absolutely. Okay. And then we'll take one more question because this is a really good one. Evan Goldberg in Chicago. Thank you for asking it.
Evan always asks me hard questions.
He does, but this is great for all of us to be equipped with this information as we talk to our members about it. So he pointed out that one thing people don't realize is that Emory's annual operating budget is what it is, maybe 4 billion. And when they hear 4 billion campaign, they think it's a massive amount of money, but it's really not. So are there some quick ways that you would respond as we explain to alum members who say, oh, Emory has a ton of money, I know they spend XYZ on this, why do they need my $25 gift?
Yeah, no, Sarah, I mean, I think that's one of the things we always talk about, right? And of course, I always point to Princeton with a $26 billion endowment. They don't have a med school, a law school, and all the other schools, and yet they have the highest alumni participation in the country. Why? Because their alumni community wants them to stay number one. Okay, that aside, I'll go back to Evan's question, right? When you look at Emory's budget, which is actually now, our total budget is edging near $7 billion on an annual basis, right? $7 billion. Almost over 5 billion of that is the healthcare system. So it's like 1.8, 1.9 is the university operating budget. Okay, big numbers. But when you get back, and this is what the president did, the Emory Law School, right? Because it's a school that people have been very concerned about in terms of rankings. It's been ranked as high as the upper teens, right? 18, 19, early 20s, mid 20s, and currently is right at 29, 30. But if you look at Emory Law's endowment, of our total endowment, it is about 68 million. That is the lowest endowment of the top 50 law schools in the country. So when you're talking about competitiveness in terms of providing financial assistance to students, recruiting faculty, supporting programming, we are at a significant disadvantage compared to any of our peers. And yet our desire to be higher ranked is obviously what all of our alums and our community wants the law school to be. And if we don't find ways to increase the support for the law school specifically, and again, I tell people all the time, if you give me $100,000 endowed scholarship for the law school, it's going to produce 5,000, 5% next year. I'm rounding up for a student. Can I use that for a nursing student? Can I use that for cancer research? No, the endowments given for each school can only be used for those schools. So our endowment isn't a pot of money. It's actually 2,400 individual accounts set up by donors for very specific purposes. And we have to obviously stay true to those purposes. The other thing, Sarah, that you just put up the 2036 website, you will not see the $4 billion goal. Because to me, it's not about the overarching goal. It's about the priorities of each individual school and unit and achieving those priorities as we seek to elevate those schools. So we really have tried to pull back and de-emphasize publicly the number and focus on the priorities and what Emory is trying to accomplish across each of its schools.
All right, Josh, this is fantastic information. And I know some people are messaging me. This is usually the reaction after alumni hear you speak, that this is information they wish their peers knew about. They had no idea. So again, you all, I will work on that with my colleagues of how we continue to get you talking points, but just keep in mind, part of this can't come through a mailer or an ad on the internet. It has to come from the peer-to-peer conversations or the staff to alum conversations. So that's where it's really powerful to have you all do a plug for this and just why that support is so meaningful. And again, it's not about the dollar amount. It is about the act of investing back in your university.
Well, thank you all again. Thanks so much for your leadership and thanks for the opportunity to speak today.
Yes, thank you so much, Josh.